I recently uploaded a TikTok where I showed off a Bongo Cat mode on the QK80 MK2. One of the most common comments I consistently got was, "All that and no numpad? No numpad but $200? What a scam. No numpad and no ISO equals no deal. Is there a 100% version of this keyboard? I need a numpad or no deal." So here we are, a full-size keyboard that has a numpad. Okay, seriously though, I only get these comments on TikTok, and half the people there seem like the only thing this board could do was have a cat mode and exist without a numpad. Regardless, this board is for all of those no numpad haters. Anyway, this is the QK101, QwertyKeys' newest iteration of their QK lineup. I recently got my hands on the QK80 MK2, and to say it simply, I was very impressed. It has that retro game vibe, but isn't overly loud, which I appreciate a lot. Its sound performance is excellent in my opinion, and it features one of the best screens I've seen on a keyboard so far. There's a lot I love about the QK80, and the QK101 is supposed to be like its bigger brother. So let's see how it stacks up. This is a big case. This thing looks nice. Flex cut aluminum, which looks pretty good. What the heck? The back is full of foam. Look at this. The most foam in the entire world. 1, 2, 4 sheets of foam. And you can always use this too. First impressions. This board came with both plate mount and PCB mount stabilizers. Very interesting. Plate mount stabilizers clip into the plate of your keyboard, while PCB mount stabilizers usually screw or clip directly into the PCB. Now, PCB mount stabilizers are the most common type since they are the most reliable and most stable. That said, a good set of plate mount stabilizers can still be amazing. Additionally, I was sent 2 plates. One aluminum plate, which is used for the PCB mount stabilizers, and then a PP plate, which is used for the plate mount stabilizers. Interestingly, the PP plate has a layer of foam attached to the top face side. I've never seen anything like this before. I'm not entirely sure why it's designed this way, but I'm excited to see if there's some sort of audible difference or maybe some kind of performance improvements. So the build experience of this thing is very similar to the QK80 MK2. However, one notable difference is that the QK80 has a quick release top plate while the QK101 doesn't. Instead, it's got 8 screws. Honestly, it's not that big of a deal, and I'm entirely sure there's a good reason for it. Other than that, the build was still great and lots of magnetic pogo pins, which I love. It's always amazing to see those. Now, as for the sound, I think it turned out pretty great. However, it leaned more towards the muted side, which I think is due to the flex cut aluminum plate. I added some of the included case foam to see if it would improve the fullness a bit, and maybe it helped slightly. It didn't really introduce any foamy sounds, but it's not quite where I want it to be. Now, since I think this more muted sound comes from the flex cut plate, I'm guessing adding plate foam will compensate for that a bit. But before I try that, I also want to test out the PP plate with this weird top layer of foam. Yesterday, after finishing the plate swap, I wasn't entirely sure how I felt about the sound. I ended up just going to bed right after, and today, I don't know, it just feels different in a good way, and I really like how it sounds now. I used it for a while during my morning work, and it has this sort of clacky sound, but it's like oddly unique. Even though the board is stuffed with foam, it surprisingly doesn't have that typical foamy sound. It's just genuinely a sound I haven't heard before. If that makes any sense, I'm just trying to describe this the best I can. Also, I used the plate mounted stabilizers since this is a plate mounted plate, and man, these stabs are good, like genuinely perfect right out of the box. Maybe I got lucky with my batch, but they felt super snappy and very responsive, which was odd because I was kind of expecting them to be mid. Plus, they were pre-lubed. Perfect pre-lubed, that's pretty insane. It's just good. It's good stuff. Today, I'm thinking I'm gonna put the aluminum plate back in the board. But as I probably mentioned earlier in the video, I'll be adding plate foam into the mix. So this should help bring out a more rich, full sound, since I think that flex cut is letting out the sound a little bit. I think it's worth a shot. I think this version of the board sounds great. I'd probably even go as far as to say it's probably my favorite version so far. The plate foam is a must for me. It's not bad by any means without it, but I just like it with it. That's it. It honestly just sounds a little bit more full. I also have to say that these switches, which are the Cherry MX2A switches, are great. I do think I'd prefer them if they were a little bit more light, but I tend to think every switch should be lighter because I like light switches. That's it. So I've had a good amount of time with this board, and I want to take a sec to talk about the design a little bit. Overall, it's got a simple rectangular design, and one of the first things you'll notice is the extruded second tone silver section around the navigation keys, screen, and LED dot display. I love this design. I think it's a great way to break up the section on the board, and it's done in a very subtle and elegant way. There's also these nice looking buttons that control the screen and a dot display, and I seriously couldn't be a bigger fan of this. It's way better than relying on some random macros that I either accidentally click or forget about. Now, to the top right of the board sits one of my least favorite design choices, this weird badge thing. I'm actually a big fan of badges and will almost prefer them every time over knobs or just extra keys, but this particular badge just isn't my favorite. It's not terrible looking, just a bit odd. All the little bits on it are wiggly and removable, which feel kind of strange or sort of a weird way to customize your board. I much prefer something that's just static and simple, like the circular badge on my Neo 75. Additionally, there's that small chance that you lose one of those little pieces, which would just be an inconvenience. There is some backlighting though behind the badge from the PCB. While it's not very bright, I think it's a nice touch. I saw Alex Otos' version of this board, and I actually like how his badge section looked and used the accent color. I think it looks way better than mine, where the badge is the same color as the entire board. Now, moving on to the back, there is another accent section where the reflective weight is displayed. I think the back is where most people have issues with the retro game vibe. It's not too bad, it's definitely not as subtle as the front though. On the right side, there are more of those little wiggly magnetic bits, which still feel like a weird choice. This rectangular piece here is a magnetic cover for the 2.4 Hz wireless dongle. I actually like the way this is hiding the dongle better than just keeping it in a bag or in my keyboard case. Plus, it doesn't wiggle around in there, and the magnets are super strong, so this thing is not coming off on its own. One detail I really liked is how below the weight there is this little slope that leads down into the weight, making it feel like it's popping out more. There's also a noticeable section on the bottom near the screws that extrudes downwards. The side profiles are fantastic. You can see both the weight accent and the top plate at the same time, along with this interesting little slope that adds a beautiful touch. The same weight and top plate design continues to the back of the board where the USB-C port is located. And again, the two-tone colorway here looks incredible. The only side I wish had more going on is the very front. I kind of wish there was a little bit of the weight showing here, maybe popping out similar to the recent Neo 75. As I mentioned earlier, one of my favorite parts of this board is the screen. It's got a super smooth matte coating, which I really appreciate for features like this. There are a good number of modes to choose from, such as this customizable code screen, a home screen. This is a custom GIF screen, and my personal favorite, as usual, Bongo Cat mode. There's really no purpose to this mode at all. It's just fun. I made a short on it, so I'll just play that because I think it gets my point across pretty well. Right now, it's in a resting state, and when I click the right side of the keyboard, the cat smacks with his right paw. Then when I click the left side of the keyboard, the cat's left paw smacks. Then if you do both really fast, you make him angry. Clicking the K and Q keys amaze him. Clicking the arrow keys make him, I don't know what that is, maybe mellow or serene. Clicking the enter key makes him happy and psyched. Then if you click the space bar, he does a big double smack. The little mouse on the side starts going faster the faster you type. And my favorite part is if you go AFK long enough, he even falls asleep. It's It's just so amazing. I love this board so much. I'm a big fan of this dot display to the right of the screen. You can change the color and switch it to a bunch of different modes using the other button. One of my favorite modes is the one where it lights up dots depending on how you type on the keyboard. And I also like just the stock QK one. I don't know, it's just a good looking feature. I think it's easy to write off these kinds of features as gimmicks, especially when done poorly, but I think these ones were done well personally. Big thumbs up for me. Overall, I think the design of this board is good. I do believe it works a little bit better on the smaller QK80 MK2, but really nothing that would keep me from not using or buying this board if I were to get it. The QK101 is a great board overall. While I do wish it had a quick release top plate, and I'm still not a fan of those little magnetic tidbit thingies, I really have no major complaints or deal breakers. From my experience, the plate mount stabilizers are fantastic, and I wouldn't hesitate to recommend them, especially if you don't have the tools or time to lube your own stabilizers. I also managed to get the sound of this board to some really interesting places, and how it ended up with the aluminum plate and plate foam is fantastic. This board also offers ISO layout compatibility, which is a nice option if that's something you prefer. The price starts at around $240, which is very reasonable considering the performance, the build quality, and it being a full-sized keyboard.